Start by offering happy birthday greetings to Lucas over there. Happy birthday. Good morning. As many of you know, North Carolina is the only state in the country that ended 2025 without a budget. But folks may not fully appreciate that when the General Assembly returns to session next month, it will have been more than 2.5 years since the state last passed a comprehensive budget. In that time, many things have changed. The state has added more than 300,000 people. The cost of living has increased by more than 6%, and the federal government is abandoning long-held commitments. Yet we have not had a full budget. So the state keeps operating at a baseline, limping along. So much so that some things are already breaking. The state faces certain critical needs that require immediate attention. That is why I am proposing, and the General Assembly must pass, a critical needs budget. We cannot wait on Medicaid. We cannot wait to keep people safe. We cannot wait to value teachers, nurses, and other public servants. And we cannot wait on many critical services like the SBI and the DMV. Today, I am calling on the General Assembly to fast-track a stripped-down $1.4 billion critical needs budget to fill the gap. Once that's done, we can move on to the full budget and all of its complexities. Let's start with Medicaid. Last fall, you all will recall, both chambers of the General Assembly agreed that Medicaid in our state was underfunded. Yet despite this agreement, they did not fund Medicaid. Instead, they promised that they would this spring. Well, thank goodness it is spring. It is now time to get it done. If we do not fully fund Medicaid well before the end of the fiscal year, health care for millions of North Carolinians will be in jeopardy and our entire health care system weakened. Medicaid is a lifeline for so many of our neighbors: children, expectant mothers, seniors, people with disabilities, and working families. Importantly, Medicaid benefits all of us because of its essential role sustaining rural hospitals and other providers that everyone uses whether or not they themselves are on Medicaid. In this way, Medicaid undergirds the entire healthcare system. We simply must save it. So I call on the House and the Senate to return to the table and fully fund Medicaid in this critical needs budget. We projected last summer what was needed to fully fund the program. We've been scrutinizing actual Medicaid expenditures through January of this year, and the numbers are on track with what our actuaries estimated. To be made whole, we are asking the General Assembly to once again appropriate $319 million as soon as possible to avoid further unnecessary chaos. Let's work together to protect people's health care, not leave patients and providers out to dry. I'll now invite forward Secretary Sangvi to say more about the need to fund Medicaid.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Governor Stein, for your leadership. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. Without $319 million needed to fully fund North Carolina Medicaid program, the program will run out of money before the end of the fiscal year. This has real consequences that people in North Carolina will feel, putting access to health care for more than 3 million people at risk. This is about 1 in 4 people, including over 500,000 babies and children, pregnant women, senior citizens, people with disabilities, and hard-working families. Medicaid is critical to older North Carolinians living in long-term care, like nursing homes and for home health services. It also provides health care coverage and long-term support for people with disabilities, offering services such as doctor visits, hospital care, mental health, and disability services as well. Medicaid is critical to rural communities, as you just heard. In some rural counties, more than half of the population cannot afford health care without the assistance of Medicaid. These are our friends, families, neighbors, members of our communities. As the governor said, the actual spend of the Medicaid program through the summer is as we've calculated through this year, through the summer, as we said at the beginning, is $319 million short. We do a year over year, we do a month over month, every month to understand how much the program is costing. As we've seen through the beginning of this calendar year, we're on track to be short $319 million. Rising healthcare inflation seen across the U.S., higher demand for behavioral health services, new medications, decreases in federal investment, and additional federal requirements have increased costs to run the Medicaid program. The bottom line is this: the General Assembly must fully fund Medicaid in order for people to get access to critical health care. Inaction would mean more uncertainty and disruptions for people and the providers who provide care. Let's work together to avoid that. We're counting on our partners at the General Assembly to act now, as they said they would, to fully fund Medicaid. It is critical to ensure our neighbors and loved ones can continue to receive the care they so critically need. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you, Secretary Sangvi. People are counting on us to protect their health care. They're also counting on us to protect their safety. To keep people safe, we need more well-trained officers on the beat in their communities, building relationships and building trust. To hire and keep the best people, we must adequately compensate our state's law enforcement officers. But we don't. North Carolina ranks 49th in the nation in starting pay for state troopers. That is a damned embarrassment. It should surprise no one that the State Highway Patrol now has more than 270 vacant positions. We're losing out on talented, service-minded people to other states, local governments, and other jobs because we don't pay our troopers enough. The state also ranks 49th in the country for starting pay for correctional officers. Again, it should surprise no one that the Department of Adult Correction has only half of the correctional officers needed to safely operate its prisons. We're asking people to put themselves in a very demanding, albeit rewarding job, asking their families to sacrifice on our behalf so that they can earn less money than they could if they worked at a Costco. In this critical needs budget, I'm calling for a 10% raise for correctional officers, troopers, and other state law enforcement officers. I will now invite forward Colonel Freddie Johnson, Commander of the North Carolina State Highway Patrol, to discuss the state's public safety needs. Colonel Johnson.
Good morning. Thank you, Governor Stein. I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak today about the importance of investing in the men and women who serve our state on the front lines of public safety. Our mission to protect and serve the people of this state and to keep our roadways safe is vital to our state's success. Every day, our troopers and our communications professionals answer that call, often in difficult and dangerous situations. To continue fulfilling that mission, we must address critical need for competitive pay for both our sworn members and our dedicated professionals who staff our communication centers. Our troopers respond to crashes, criminal activity, and emergencies across all 100 counties. At the same time, our telecommunications are the calm voices behind the radio, coordinating responses and ensuring help gets wherever it is needed. Those roles require skills, training, and tremendous commitment. But we are seeing increasing challenges in recruiting new members and retaining experienced ones, as other agencies and industries offer higher pay. Providing competitive salaries is essential if we want to keep the experienced professionals we have and attract the next generation of troopers and telecommunicators for our state. Along with salaries, we must recognize the importance of investing in the infrastructure that supports our mission, from modernizing our facilities and our Viper communication systems to ensuring our equipment and fleet are ready. These investments allow us to respond effectively whenever North Carolinians need us the most. Whether it is a severe storm, a major emergency, or the everyday work of keeping our highways safe, the people of this state expect our Highway Patrol to be ready at a moment's notice. These investments help ensure that is where we exactly are. On behalf of the men and women of the North Carolina Highway Patrol and all law enforcement across this state, I want to thank the governor and the General Assembly for recognizing the importance of investing in public safety and in the people who make that mission possible. Thank you for your time, Governor. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Colonel Johnson. And while we're addressing the salaries of our public safety officials, we need to make the Department of Adult Correction whole. The DAC has approximately 1,000 more inmates today than it did 3 years ago. And healthcare costs have increased by 10% over the past 3 years. Meanwhile, the state has not passed a budget in 2.5 years. As a result, the department faces a structural budget deficit, even with its significant efforts to cut and manage expenses. For the past year, the DAC has been forced into the untenable position of having to ask vendors to float them on their bills. That is not responsible budgeting for a household. It is surely not the way a $2 billion state agency to manage our state prisons should operate. DAC needs $80 million just to get back in the black. It is time to stop kicking the can down the road. Keeping people safe requires more than prisons and public safety officers. We are all painfully aware of recent instances in North Carolina, in Charlotte, in Southport, in Raleigh, when someone experiencing a serious mental health crisis tragically murdered fellow North Carolinians. That is why I'm calling for a 10% raise for state nurses and healthcare workers who treat people with severe mental illness. Of course, the vast majority of people with mental health challenges pose no risk to themselves or others, but a small minority do when they don't receive appropriate treatment. But too many in need are turned away or forced to wait weeks for that treatment. Meanwhile, we have hundreds of inpatient beds in state psychiatric facilities that sit empty because we don't have the staff to serve those beds. That is a tragic waste. Let's invest in the people who treat other people, getting them healthy and making all of us safer. Our state has so much going for it. This past year, we were ranked the top state for business, the top state for economic development, the top state for workforce development. We're the top state that people from other states are moving to. We had the highest employment growth of all 50 states in the country last quarter. We're experiencing success, and that success is because of our people. And because we as a state have invested in our people through our public schools over the decades. But today we risk hollowing out the institutions that have helped to create that success. That includes our failure to adequately compensate our children's teachers. We are a bottom 10 state when it comes to public school teacher pay. After you've taught for 15 years, you don't get another salary increase for a decade. And starting teacher pay is lower in North Carolina than every one of our neighboring states. Yet teachers drive student success. They are the number one in-school factor of student achievement. We know this, but we haven't passed a meaningful raise for teacher in years. If we truly believe that North Carolina's kids are the future of our state, then we must make the job of educating them more attractive. This critical needs budget would give starting teachers a 13% pay increase, putting us on a path to raise starting teacher pay in North Carolina to the highest in the Southeast. It would give all teachers nearly a 6% raise on average. It would restore master's teacher pay, and it would provide more pay increases for our veteran teachers. Let's raise teacher pay. Let's put our money where our values are. I will now invite Principal John Lassiter from Perquimans County to the stage to address you. Principal Lassiter.
Governor Stein, thank you for the opportunity to speak for something that has shaped my life, teachers, and public education. My name is John Lassiter. I serve as the president of the North Carolina Principal and Assistant Principal Association, a former Wells Fargo Northeast Principal of the Year, and proud to serve as the principal of Hertford Grammar School in Perquimans County, a small rural community that reflects so many towns across our state. I want to start with a quick story. I know a third grader who missed more than 40 consecutive days of school from Thanksgiving to Valentine's Day because he was in and out of the hospital and extremely ill. He fell behind. He struggled to read and he felt embarrassed. He was so nervous to read out loud that he would literally sweat when his teachers called on him. I know that third grader because I am him. I'm standing here today because my teachers refused to give up on me. They didn't just teach me to read, they taught me perseverance, hard work, and to believe. I bet if I pause long enough, everyone in this room can think of a teacher who did the same for you. Someone who saw more in you than you saw in yourself. You see, that's what teachers do. They quietly change the trajectory of a child's life. They carry hope into hard places. They stand with a steady voice that says, "You can." This moment matters because right now, too many teachers feel undervalued, ignored, and unsupported. We're asking them to do a job that gets more challenging every year to meet rising needs. Teaching can, at times, be thankless, and this profession carries an enormous societal burden. A child's zip code should not determine the quality of education that they receive. We want to believe that. But if we're honest, given current levels of funding, right now it often does. If we truly want a highly qualified teacher in every classroom, then our students have to see teaching as a career worth pursuing, one with dignity, stability, and a respectable salary. Here's what I can't wrap my mind around. How can North Carolina be top 10 in the size of its population, top 10 in the size of its economy, and be celebrated as best state for business, yet rank in the bottom 10 for teacher pay, public school funding effort, and per pupil spending? In light of this, there's no reason North Carolina, with our growth, our talent, and our economic momentum, should be asking teachers to carry the future on their back while we fall behind on investing in them. North Carolina is at a crossroads, and a crossroads requires more than good intentions. It requires courageous action. Educators deserve a raise that reflects the dignity and prestige this profession was once known for. And we need to compete for great teachers across state lines so North Carolina classrooms don't become training grounds for other states' workforce. In Perquimans, we've had to get creative to plan for our future. Our Grow Your Own program, the PQ Ambassadors, have given high school students the chance to work with elementary classes and experience teaching as a potential career. This year, 4 seniors earned the North Carolina Teaching Fellow Scholarship in part because of the success of this program. We know that students with local roots understand both the assets and challenges of our community. They also will make the most of coming home, teaching, and making a long-term impact in Perquimans County. A professional mentor of mine says that your talk talks and your walk talks, but your walk talks louder than your talk talks. So I'm challenging the General Assembly today to let your walk talk. Find compromise, pass a budget, act, and lead. Help us take a meaningful step towards restoring the prestige that once came with being a teacher. And make the most important investment a state can make, one that pays dividends for generations. Invest in teachers. Invest in our children. Invest in public schools. Because when we lift educators up, we don't just strengthen communities. We don't just strengthen schools, we strengthen communities and lessen the impacts of poverty, equipping the future workforce of North Carolina to make our state great. Thank you, Governor Stein.
Thank you, Principal Lassiter. While we correct pay for teachers, nurses, and law enforcement officers, we must also do right by North Carolina's other public servants. the transportation workers clearing roads in winter weather, the benefits specialists helping veterans get connected to services, and so many others. None of them have received any raise in pay in nearly 2 years, despite inflation and rising costs. Health insurance premiums just went up for state employees. So essentially, our state employees are being asked to do the same job today for less money than they earned a year ago. Let's fast track a raise in pay for state employees and a cost of living increase for our retirees. In addition to our health care, public safety, and public education needs, many other critical public services are underfunded. In this critical needs budget, however, I am not including all of the important needs that state government today faces, because I expect the legislature to pass a comprehensive budget relatively soon. However, there are a handful of other truly urgent needs that cannot wait for them to work through all of their differences. These include the following. The State Bureau of Investigation's operational budget is in the red because its caseload has dramatically increased in recent years. 262 child care programs have closed since the state last passed a budget, in part due to inadequate child care subsidies. And children of veterans who were injured or killed in service to our country are being denied scholarships that we promised them because the legislature has not passed a budget. More than 1,400 of these deserving students had their scholarships reduced, and more eligible students were denied the opportunity to apply because there were no funds. We cannot abandon our promises or neglect our critical services. We're going to work together to develop a comprehensive, fiscally responsible budget for the short session. But before we do that, let's act now to keep North Carolina strong and to address certain critical needs. Together, we can lead our state and stop the bleeding. Let's give North Carolinians the stability they deserve and pass this critical needs budget that makes essential investments in our safety, our health, and our education. Thank you, and at this time, I'll invite the speakers up to join me for the question and answer session, and any of you may address your questions to me here. Deb, why don't you come on this side? Colonel, why don't you come on this side as well, please? You can address questions directly to me or any of the speakers, and we have Kristen Walker, the head of the Office of State Management and Budget.
And for question portion, we're going to go ahead and offer the microphone for people so that people can hear them.
Anyone have a question? Yes.
Hey, Colin Campbell with WUNC News. Dr. Sangvi and also the governor, what sort of deadlines are you up against for the Medicaid program? At what point are you going to have to make some cuts to services if the legislature doesn't act before a certain date?
Well, the whole purpose of this critical needs budget is to avoid this chaos. We experienced chaos in the fall. When they didn't give us the money that we needed, we had to reduce provider rates of what we could pay providers to treat people on Medicaid. It created chaos. The courts intervened. We went back to the old rates. If they don't give us the money to fully fund Medicaid, there will be chaos again. Why? It is absolutely avoidable. Let's address it now in the spring when they said that they would, so that we can avoid all the games that we have to go through, the scenario planning and institute cuts when they're unnecessary. Just pass a critical needs budget. I don't know, Dev, if you want to add to that.
Yeah. Thank you, Governor. I don't know how much more I can add. The governor said it well. The deadline is now. I mean, the result of not getting the funding is we'd have to go back to think about programs and services. And as the governor just said, that creates more chaos, more uncertainty, decreased wellness. So the deadline is now.
Yeah, I mean, to follow up, it looks like the short session obviously is in April. They're technically in session this week, but doesn't seem to have called their members back to Raleigh. Does this need to happen in March, or could it wait to April?
I'm happy to take it, sir. The sooner the better. We understand that there are calendars and others, and so if it were priority in April, that would be well appreciated. If there's an opportunity before then, it would be even better. But as you can imagine, the deadline is looming as June 30th gets here, so sooner is better.
Good Morning, Dina with CBS 17 News. Republican leadership has repeatedly said that they have until the end of this year to really get a final budget. If a critical needs budget does not happen and they wait until the end of this year, what then?
Things that are breaking will break. We cannot wait and expect people to work for less money on a real basis than what they have earned in the previous year. When we're at the bottom of trooper pay, we're at the bottom of the country in correctional officer pay, when we're at the bottom of the country in what we pay our teachers and how much we invest in public education, you can't afford to go lower. At a certain point, things break. We have so many things that are going well for us in North Carolina. More jobs added in North Carolina than any state in the country in the last quarter. We're the number one state that other people are moving to from other states. We're the top state for business, the top state for business, economic development, this top state for workforce development. These things are great, but it's a result of investments that we've made in the past. We can kill the goose that lays the golden eggs if we are not responsible and pass a fiscally responsible budget.
Thanks. Gary Robertson with AP. Given the results of last week's election, Governor, how would you evaluate your leverage now, given what we've seen and what members of the public want from their legislature?
I think what the election showed is that the voters of North Carolina want action that serves their interests. People of this state want to have safe neighborhoods, safe streets. They want a strong highway patrol. People of this state want a healthcare system that is strong and viable and is excellent all across the state, including our rural communities. They want a strong Medicaid system. People want great public schools that educate our children so that they have skills and knowledge to succeed in what is a very fast-changing economy and world. We need to have excellent teachers in our public schools. They want critical public services. They want our prisons to not essentially go bankrupt so that they can keep dangerous people safe and secure while they rehabilitate. These are basic functions of state government, and that's what their voters want. These are not Democratic issues. These are not Republican issues. These are not unaffiliated voter issues. These are core North Carolina issues.
I have two questions, one election related and then a budget one. For the election, are you confident in how things are playing out with the Senate Leader Berger and Sheriff Page race? And if it goes to a recount, does that your confidence in the process extend to that if that's where we end up?
At this point, I have no reason to worry that the numbers are not accurate. I have every hope that they are. One great thing about our system is it has a lot of fail-safe methods to ensure accuracy. The margins are very tight. I think it's 23 votes at the moment, and under the law, there's going to be a canvass when that number becomes official after the military ballots come in. And then at that point, almost certainly, Senator Berger will have the right under the law to ask for recount, and it's up to him. That's his decision to do it. It would be if the margin is 23, it would be highly unusual for that margin to be overcome in a recount, if not without any precedent. But that's his decision. But the fact of the matter remains is Senator Berger is the senator for his district, and he cares deeply about his constituents. And whatever happens in that election is truly irrelevant to the work of the day, which is a legislature that needs to deliver for people. And I know he wants to do right by his people. He wants to do right by the people of the state of North Carolina.
Have you, on the budget, it's March, is there already work being done on planning a revenue forecast? And then tied to that, is part of asking for the raises now because you're, I guess, not confident that there would be a budget for the next fiscal year, because I assume these raises would be retroactive for the past year if something is passed.
Yeah, the budget, the raises would definitely be retroactive. No, our hope is that there will then be a short session where we can augment those raises potentially and make additional other investments. And I'll bring Director Walker forward to talk about the revenue forecast.
Thank you, Governor Stein. We are working, so between the Office of State Budget and Management and the Fiscal Research Division at the General Assembly, they are right now working on a consensus forecast that should be released in late March. So we will have that then.
Hey, Will Dorn from WRAL. I wanted to follow up on that same question just now. You know, we've seen your office, the Legislative Fiscal Analysis, say that we're heading towards a deficit soon, possibly as soon as this coming fiscal year. Obviously, as you stand up here asking for more money to deal with our state's growing population, is that compatible with our current tax scheme that we have in North Carolina?
Everything that we're asking for in this budget is sustainable over the long term. There are other critical investments. In fact, I'm not satisfied with the pay increases that we're putting in here for state employees, for teachers, for law enforcement. I want there to be even more, because even a 10% raise for starting trooper pay, that's not going to jump us. I think it moves us from 49th to 47th. All right? That's progress. It's moving in the right direction. But who would be proud to know that the state of North Carolina invests in our troopers 47th in the country? We are not a poor state, but we are making ourselves a poor state by reckless pre-programmed tax cuts. And that will be a topic for additional conversation. I mean, we're looking at $900 million less in the coming year if the tax cuts go forward for next year, and then $3.5 billion the year after, pre-programmed tax cuts. This is absolutely reckless in terms of our ability to continue to meet the basic expectations of what a North Carolina resident expects from the state.
Michael Perchik, WTVD. I know there was bipartisan support for the House budget. Has there been any conversation with either House leadership or Senate leadership regarding this critical needs budget and what their temperature is, or their willingness to engage in kind of mini budgets rather than one comprehensive budget?
Yeah. To be clear, this critical needs budget is not in lieu of a comprehensive budget. Clearly, the state needs a comprehensive budget. My fear has been that they will just push off the 2025-2026 budget and just do the short session budget and pretend as if this past year did not exist. Yet, in the past year, we've added many more prisoners to our state prisons. Our workers are experiencing the same inflation as everybody else. And so we need to address those real needs now, but that doesn't mean we will not pass a comprehensive budget. We absolutely must do that. We've had plenty of conversations. My staff has met with legislative staff, both the nonpartisan professional staff of the General Assembly and each of the corner offices where the Speaker and the President Pro Tem work. And so everyone's very much aware of what our thinking is, and I'm optimistic that they will agree. But, they agreed that we needed to increase funding for Medicaid, and they couldn't come to a deal. So I'm hoping that we're at a point in the political cycle where we can put our differences and political disputes behind us and put to the front what is going to help the people of North Carolina, what is going to help them get better education for their kids, what's going to help them have a better healthcare system for their parents and grandparents, what's going to help people on our streets be safer. That's what this critical needs budget is about.
In the Outer Banks with WTKR News 3, we have critical needs here of erosion, NC-12 challenges, and houses falling into the ocean. Is there a plan at the state level to work on addressing those issues to help coastal communities?
The Department of Transportation is surely working with partners in the local areas on the Outer Banks to figure out what makes sense over the long term to ensure the continued operation of NC-12. In terms of houses falling in the ocean, the primary challenge is that for a homeowner whose house is certain to fall into the ocean, they can't get insurance until it collapses. So their incentive is to wait for it to collapse, when we all know it's a matter of days, weeks, months that it will fall. So there is legislation, bipartisan legislation in the U.S. Congress, which is responsible for the National Flood Insurance Program, to, in certain circumstances, allow for a homeowner to get a claim so that we can remove the home in an orderly fashion. It's a ridiculous situation at the moment. But we understand that there are long-term needs for the Outer Banks, and everyone's looking very hard at that.
This is for Principal Lassiter. I'm curious, since you're up in Perquimans County, kind of close to the Virginia border, what are you seeing in terms of losing teachers to other districts, either other states or other types of jobs, and what does that mean sort of practically on a day-to-day basis in terms of filling the classrooms in your schools and others in your district?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm from Perquimans County. I graduated from Perquimans County High School. I was a North Carolina teaching fellow at NC State. And so when I said that a child's education shouldn't be determined by their zip code, I believe it to my heart. It is challenging. We compete to keep teachers that could make 10 or 15,000 more dollars by driving 45 minutes across the state line. Sometimes the joke is I can pay North Carolina taxes and get Virginia salary. And that hurts because our kids deserve a quality education. And so what compounds that and makes it more challenging is that there's less high school students interested in the teaching profession. And so, my challenge is that the goal that we're shooting for needs a short-term solution, but also needs, a long-term commitment. And as the governor said, every state that touches North Carolina pays their teachers more. So yes, for me, Virginia is that state. But as a member of the Principal of the Year cohort, every principal who borders another state fights the same battle, so it's not unique to me in northeastern North Carolina. But thank you for the question.
I'll just add to that I'm at the age where all of my friends are just having kids graduate college, and a good friend of ours had their child graduate from Appalachian State to be a teacher. He was so excited to be a teacher. He's teaching in South Carolina. It was like $10,000 or $15,000 difference, and he wanted to be a North Carolinian. He just could not rationally justify staying in his home state where he wanted to be because of how poor we pay our starting teachers. And this is going to be, the tail on this is decades. If we have an entire cohort of kids in high school and college who simply have concluded that this is not a viable career, I'm not going to even pursue this, we won't feel it until the current generation of teachers have retired and there's no one to take their place. Or those who are not the ones that we would want or choose to be our teachers. So the time is now to demonstrate, not only to our current teachers, but to people who are thinking about being teachers, that we actually value public education, that we think that the people who spend hours a day with our children trying to give them the skills, the knowledge, the ability to think critically, communicate effectively, that we actually think that it matters who's doing that job. Because right now, I think objectively, people will question the sincerity of the state of North Carolina.
Will Michaels with NC Local. Just a clarification on Medicaid for a second, if I could. I think in January, DHHS was talking about 250,000 people under Medicaid at risk of losing their coverage just under the cuts from the One Big Beautiful Bill. But I'm trying to wrap my head around the timeline because some of those cuts I think happen later this year or even next year. But with the gap that you're saying exists before the end of the fiscal year, I mean, could people start to lose their coverage before June 30th? I'm just trying to kind of understand when that might happen.
That's a great question. There's so many things happening in the Medicaid program right now. Sometimes it's hard to even keep track of them. We certainly have the rebates challenge that we have right now. There are the issues with H.R. 1. Those two things are separate. What we're talking about today is rebates. That's the funding we need to do same store, same business year over year, largely related to enrollment and inflation. It also underscores the reason why we need to solve the problem now, because we do have the challenges of H.R. 1, the potential for people to lose coverage looming in front of us. So all the more important to get this done now.
Thank you all.